Hello and welcome back to Pain Relief Path. I am Dr. Pan Zhang, and in this episode, I have an awesome interview with my great friend Jenni Sills. She is a nutritionist, a hormone expert. She's coming out with all sorts of stuff, always learning. She's phenomenal. And in this episode, we sit down and we chat about inflammation. The good, yes, there's good parts about inflammation, the bad, and how to really control inflammation, like the truth behind it. There's no gimmicks, there's no, wonder pills or anything like that in this episode, but rather real applicable things that you can do and change in your life to really help control your inflammatory response. As always, thank you so much for listening and hope you enjoy.
Hello.
There we go. Okay. Technology.
We did it.
I'm like,
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. It's Sunday, it's a good day.
I know. It's awesome. It's so funny. You have to go live before you have to add anybody. So there's like a minute of me being like, how does this work?
I love it. And I love that we're on two different coasts, coast to coast here.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Social media can be great for that. So
yes, it's awesome. So it's afternoon on the East Coast.
4 p.m.
You're almost like wrapping up your day. How has your day been?
It's been great, actually. I just met with my girls from the junior league. So we work on like volunteerism and talking about events and different things we have going on. So I got a little social hour in today. It was nice.
Nice.
How's your morning?
I know it's only 1 o'clock here. Morning has been fantastic. I actually started a little project. So the side of where I live, we kind of live in a very hilly area. So I've been wanting to build steps in to be able to get to our front door. So I don't have to like scale this like 90-degree angle every time. And I started that today. It's one of those things where it's like I've had it on my mind for the last 2 years since we've lived here. And I'm like, always like, no, trying to make it more complicated than it has to be. And today's like, I'm just going to move some rocks and dig some things and let's see what happens.
Get those muscles moving. Yeah, get it done. I love it.
Yep, exactly. Who knows if they will last, but right now they're functional steps, like halfway.
That's perfect. Congrats. That's awesome.
Thank you. Cool. So welcome everybody who's joining. And this will be a podcast episode as well. So if you are listening on the podcast, thank you, fantastic people, for joining us. And we are going to be talking about inflammation today. Mm-hmm. So just so you guys know, my name's Pan, for those of you who don't know me. I'm a chronic pain coach. I've been a PT for years and years and years, and chronic pain is just my passion. I love seeing people in the clinic with it. But even more so, I love coaching people with it because chronic pain is such a multi-dimensional issue that just the regular medical model doesn't have the space, not just physical, but also the mental, emotional space to truly help people with chronic pain. So that's why I shifted into the coaching space, and it's been a phenomenal journey ever since.
I love it. And I am Jenni Sills. I started my journey as a nutrition coach, which I still am. I do more of the, if you're not looking for a quick fix, I'm your gal. I look at the root cause of why you're feeling the way you are, or maybe why you're stuck. But one of the common themes I saw through every client I talked with, because I work with women, was hormone imbalance. And so I've been wanting to learn more because I want to help women at an even deeper level. So I am now in process of becoming certified as a functional hormone specialist. So I'm super stoked to be able to help women get to the root cause, which usually is somehow looped into your hormones. So that's what I do.
Yeah. I mean, everything, especially with women, I mean, men too, for sure. But there's so much that's just not understood with women and hormones. Mm-hmm. And I feel like so much of it is just a shot in the dark. And I love it. I love that you said that you're like, if you don't want a quick fix, I'm your gal. Yeah. Same thing here. It's like quick fixes, just they don't last. They're not great for you.
And that's why we gel.
Yeah. 100%. Cool. So let's just dive right in and chat about inflammation. So the first thing I really want to address is some myths behind inflammation, because inflammation is one of those like big, bad, ugly things. Everybody's like, you just have to get rid of all of the inflammation in your body, then you're going to be able to live a big, healthy life until you're like 300 years old.
Mm-hmm.
But what most people don't realize is that inflammation is actually a good thing. Like, your body has an inflammatory process for a reason.
Yeah.
It's just that sometimes it goes haywire a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's like an unwanted guest that sticks around for a little bit longer than you really want it to. And that's when it becomes a problem.
Yeah. And one thing I forgot to tell you earlier, but I was thinking about is like ovulation is actually an inflammatory process. So like our body has inflammatory processes built in as a like a defense mechanism or a protection mechanism, or as a way for like things to work. So I always say like you were saying, like in its nugget by itself, like inflammation is not a bad thing, but it's the chronic inflammation that we're going to get to that creates so many problems.
I did not know that ovulation is an inflammatory process. So
yeah. I mean, nothing like crazy, but yeah, it is an inflammatory process. So
that's very cool. So let's kind of start with what good inflammation is. And just so for people to like kind of understand what it is, and then we'll get into like the chronic inflammation, the stuff that we really want to address when we're starting to have issues. So good inflammation is things like during ovulation, when you actually are expecting inflammation, or after you have some sort of injury or insult to tissues within your body. So the inflammatory process is good in a sense that it actually jump starts the healing process. Without inflammation, your body doesn't know, hey, something happened, we actually need to address this. The inflammatory process is basically your body sending all sorts of like cells and chemicals and fluids into an area to help clean up any damage that has been done and to kind of help process. So that is called acute inflammation. It's not very cute. It's usually a lot of swelling, redness, warmth, but that is acute inflammation, and that is good inflammation. I think everybody has probably heard of like RICE, rest, ice, compression, elevation. And that was a term or an acronym coined by a doctor years and years and years ago. And basically that was the way of like, okay, if you have an injury, this is what you need to be doing immediately after the injury. Well, that same doctor, I can't remember his name for the life of me. I should have looked it up before this, but that same doctor actually very recently, within the last year or so, has said, actually, ice is not good. You don't want ice initially for inflammation, because it dampens that initial inflammatory response, which means your body is like, oh, I actually don't know if I should be healing. And this has been backed up by a really, really interesting article, research study that was summarized in the New York Times, showing that if you're taking anti-inflammatories early on, and this was specifically a study directed towards back pain, it can actually prolong the inflammation and actually cause chronic inflammation, which is super interesting.
Yeah, that is very interesting. I think also we're so quick to just jump to like medication. Like I feel a little bit of pain. I know when we're in our luteal phase, like your joints are more malleable just by the nature of like the hormones, and which hormones are like higher or lower, right? And which ones support, you know, bone health and all that. And so like when I am exercising, I'm not, even though I'm doing resistance training, I'm not lifting as heavy as I would in my ovulatory phase or my follicular phase, because I know that I'm more prone to injury. And that when I, like my knees especially, or where I, as I'm aging, starting to feel a little bit more like inflammation in them, then that's my cue to like, maybe we're not doing resistance training. Maybe I'm doing yoga. Maybe I'm doing something else, taking a rest day. So I also think it's like learning to cue into your body. Like, what is it telling you? What is that pain? Like pain is a way for telling you, your body's telling you something. So
yep, 100%.
Yeah.
Pain's just your body's alert, like alarm system.
Right.
So yeah, and pay attention. And there's like a fine line between paying too much attention and then just stopping movement altogether. But I love what you said. It's like, okay, my knees hurt today. I'm not going to go, you know, back squat 200 pounds at the gym today. I'm going to take it easy and do yoga. That's exactly what you're supposed to do. Keep
Right.
moving, but listen to your body.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very cool.
Love it.
So let's jump into, kind of just the overview of acute inflammation, the good stuff. So are we ready to jump into the chronic inflammation? Anything else to add there?
No, I think you had it all.
Awesome. Cool. So chronic inflammation. So this is the big, bad, ugly inflammation that everybody is trying to address. Chronic inflammation is the stuff that just didn't go away. Mm-hmm. So this is when you have the initial inflammatory response, which is a lot of cleanup cells and a lot of cleanup chemicals, sometimes even hormones and fluids that stay in the area. Now, when those things stay in the area, it can actually do further damage to the tissue. And that's why chronic inflammation is not fantastic. And that's why we want to get rid of that as much as we can. But like I said, part of that is really making sure you're going through the acute stage, especially after an injury or some sort of insult to the area. You want to get through the acute stage well, let the inflammatory process ride out. That's the number one tip to avoid chronic inflammation. Yeah. And I'm going to kind of let you go into how other ways to avoid chronic inflammation. But the biggest, so if you're I'm not sure if I am chronically inflamed, I just have all these symptoms, but does that mean it's inflammation? So chronic inflammation can present in a ton of different ways. So chronic pain, obviously, is one.
That's the one that everyone's oh, I'm not in pain. So, or my joints don't hurt, my back doesn't hurt, so I don't have chronic inflammation.
Yeah, not true. So other ways that you can see if you to actually see if you've had inflammation is actually GI issues, ongoing GI issues. If you have allergies or if you have any sort of autoimmune disease process, most likely you are at some level inflamed beyond your baseline, what your baseline should be, right?
And the GI issues that you were talking about, I mean, if you think about our gut is our second brain in our body. So it's where we produce and secrete hormones, right? So not more than just our sex hormones, right? So all different kinds of hormones, and the neurotransmitters that go from our gut and our brain, they're connected, and the hormones travel along the bloodstream and they send messages to all of our tissues and organs. And so if we're inflamed because we're eating highly processed foods, we're chronically stressed, because our stress hormones are also, or happy hormones are produced in our gut, then everything else kind of shuts down. Nothing else can happen if our body is, and our gut is fighting inflammation. We are going to find ourselves getting sick more easily, building up things like autoimmune disorders and diseases. The chronic stress. So I heard this morning, I was listening to, it's a great show on Netflix about living to 100. And they did a study on all the different blue zones in the world where they have the highest concentration of I'm not going to say it right.
Yep.
Yes.
So people who are over 100.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm no, I'm not going to say it right.
You got it.
But the way the gal described it, she's when we're stressed, think of it as our body pushes a button, hey, there's a stressor, right? And when it does that, it releases glucose into our bloodstream. And so when you have a big stressor, let's say back when cavemen around, we were running from a bear, running from a tiger, right? That was inflammation would start to increase in our body because it was a protective marker. Hey, you need to run from this extreme circumstance right now. Or if my husband was saying, when people are in battle, oftentimes if they got a massive wound, they would still be able to be in battle and fight before they would bleed out, because your body, that inflammation is a way to protect you from bleeding out. It's a way to protect your body. And so the problem is now we have all these low-lying ruminating stressors that are actually more, as they build up, more traumatic than an actual traumatic event, like running from an actual tiger or bear. And so over time, that button doesn't ever turn off. And so we have all this excess glucose, which then doesn't know what to do. We're not using it for fuel. We're not using it for protection. And so it's then released into our body and stored as fat, which will be inflammation. And so that's what's happening. People are like, well, I don't really have a lot of gut issues. I always go to like, what's your lifestyle look like?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
How are you managing your stress? What,
Right.
are you building in rest? Because that's going to then just trigger the ripple effect of, man, like my knees hurt more now. I can't do the same activities I used to do. Or all of a sudden you have back pain and you don't know where it's coming from. Like those things start to stem, as well as then you'll see like hormonal imbalances, because your hormones, like your reproductive system, is the last thing your body's going to focus on if it's too busy trying to figure out what to do with this excess inflammation. And that's when a lot of women especially start to see problems with fertility or their cycles or their mood swings. All of those things, they start to filter. And so they come to me and they'll be like, I just wish I had more energy. Mm-hmm. Or I feel like I'm eating right and I'm, trying to get sleep, but nothing's changing. I can't lose this weight,
Right.
And so usually I'm like, there's some chronic inflammation probably somewhere in there and we got to address it. So that's the biggest one, because it's kind of all encompassing, right? Like gut issues where our hormones are stored, how we eat, how we handle stress, how much we're sleeping.
Yeah.
Those all connect.
Yeah. Stress, I mean, the crossover between what you teach your clients and what I teach my clients for different issues is just, I mean, if there was a Venn diagram, it'd be like this same circle. Right? So like, this is like, it doesn't matter if you are having like hormonal issues mm-hmm. or like cycle issues or fertility issues, or if your main issue is chronic pain. Stress is a huge, right. And kind of what we were talking about before, pain is your body's alarm system. Mm-hmm. And when you're going through a stressful event, the stress is basically setting off your alarm system over and over and over again. And it creates this nasty feedback loop. Right. And then that alone prolongs your inflammatory response.
I mean, have you ever like had a smoke detector, like battery go dead and that like how annoying that is? Like that's what your body is like, seriously, still? Like you haven't fixed this yet? Change the battery.
Yeah.
Like,
it's always at like 1 or 2 a.m. in the morning.
Yes, it is. Like, it's never at a convenient time.
Yeah.
One of the other really unique things they said on the show and the study was that 55% of Americans are chronically stressed, and they're 20% higher than the rest of the world in terms of their chronic stress levels. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's our constant go. So, yeah.
And here's the thing, and this is what I definitely emphasize this to my clients all the time. Stress is definitely a part of life. Right. It's just something that happens, and stress is a good thing, just like inflammation is a good thing. Yeah. Like you were saying, you need a stress response to stay alive, basically.
Right. Yeah. You don't want to be like, the bear's coming.
Oh, yay. Or have you ever seen those videos on like reels and stuff of people running towards the bears at like national parks and stuff like this? Right. I think you're broken. Like that's not what you're supposed to be doing. Yeah. But anyway, back to the regular topic. I can't even remember what I was saying because now I just have that.
Yeah, you got stress is a good thing. Like exercise is a thing. So exercise is not a bad thing. Excess exercise is a chronic inflammation on your body. Anything in excess, essentially.
Yeah. And I remember what I was going to say now. So one thing I was going to say is you can't change what other people are doing. So if somebody else is stressing you out, or circumstances that is out of your control is stressing you out, you can't change that. Mm-hmm. But what you can change is how you're managing mm-hmm. your reactions and your thoughts and your feelings about that. And that's a lot about what I coach on, mm-hmm. not just around stress, but just the chronic pain, everything leading into chronic pain in general. But that is key. So some people get really frustrated because they're like, well, I know stress is a big part of this, but I have all these things going on in my life. It's not going to go away. This isn't going to work for me. And the inflammation is just going to keep happening. Right. But if you can adjust how you're approaching situations, how you're thinking about them, and then your actions, it can really, really make a difference.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I created the cycle syncing method program that I've been sharing one of the pathways is lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And what I tell women is like, it's none of the pathways, even the nutrition ones, are diet based. It's more of, hey, there's 4 phases in your cycle, and these are where the hormone levels should be. So eat these foods on the nutrition path to support and optimize the hormones so you reduce your PMS symptoms. Or if you are someone who loves exercise, but you maybe are like, oh yeah, I'm kind of guilty of over exercising. That was me for a long time. It's learning how to scale things. And so I tell women, if you're feeling overwhelmed with stress, start with the lifestyle pathway. And really it's just looking at, man, Jenny's saying that in my ovulatory phase, I should be feeling like confident and energized. And I never feel confident or energized. Mm-hmm. And it's like the first month, just taking notes of what life looks like for you. Mm-hmm. And then where your hormones, when they're balanced, like the good, like where should they be? And then there are suggestions and steps of like, here's the steps that are so small that you can take of like, ask for help. During this week before your period starts, you probably just like, it's the hardest thing women have. I know I'm guilty of it. Like just asking for help. Like, I know my energy levels are typically lower the week before my period starts. So I need to learn to ask for help. And that's all I'm going to practice this month. It's just like preparing myself to ask for help, whether it's with meal prep or picking up kids or, cleaning around the house, or might even be hiring a cleaning service, or, it's like, there's little things, whatever resonates with you. And once you start to get used to that, you realize you can only control you. Mm-hmm. But it's like such a big impact for such a small ask, essentially, right? It's like when you learn to live in tune with how your body is designed to be and to perform, there's so much more joy. Because I used to be the go, 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 I have to do. And when I started syncing my cycle, it was no longer, I feel guilty because I'm not doing this. It was, hey, good job, you're listening to your body and you're taking care of yourself. And I've seen, like, even with business, like even when I step back and do a little less those weeks, my business only gets stronger. My clients only get more from me. It's like the output is so much better than when you come back. So I just think, like you said, like stressors, you cannot control anybody else. And sometimes you can't control maybe that you have deadlines at work, or that, life keeps moving, but you can control saying what you say yes or no to some degree. And doing more of what gives your body and what you need for that moment. And that's where I think like true health lies, and like healing, right? And reducing inflammation. Yeah. So that's what I help women do. I love it.
Yep. And also as you're speaking and talking about the lifestyle branch of the cycle syncing method that you teach and you coach on, it's just so interesting that we haven't gotten into at all about medication or, herbal remedies and things like that to help with inflammation. Because although those things are important and some people definitely need a chemical like boost and help, what happens is when you're taking 5 different things, medications, herbal things, whatever it is you're taking, and you're still having those issues, it is no longer just a chemical process. Yeah. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck, especially in the medical system, right? A lot of people get stuck with their inflammatory pathway and, how they're addressing their chronic pain, at least, because they just get medications thrown at them. And, if this doesn't work, then try this one. I know that gave you 5 different side effects. Let's switch over to this one, without addressing any of the other stuff that we've been talking about. Right. So that, I think, is really the missing key for so many people when they're trying to really address their chronic inflammation.
Right. Well, I mean, you can take, like you said, 5 different medications, maybe a couple supplements in there. But if you're still not sleeping well, that's when your body rests and repairs. It restores itself, and it goes through like getting rid of some of the inflammatory cytokines in your body and those kinds of things. And so if you're not getting quality sleep, like
no medication is going to help you.
Right. No medication is going to help you. Like I have people who are like, I eat all the right things and I exercise, and I'm like, are you sleeping? They're like, well, about 5 hours a night. I'm like, yeah, just focus on sleep and I can help you do that. I have this week, I'm going to be talking all about how you can naturally produce melatonin and how you can get better sleep, because that is the best way to fight weight loss, plateaus, inflammation, you know, mood swings, all those things. It's just get some sleep, peeps. It's like the busy season right now. Like,
yep.
Don't fall into the trap. Sleep.
Yeah. I mean, sleep is so important. I have people, you know, after surgeries and things like, I just want to sleep all the time. I'm like, listen to your body. Sleep all the time. Go for it, because that's when you are healing. That's when the inflammation, the acute inflammation, can actually do most of the work. So get 12 to 15 hours of sleep after a major surgery or accident or injury. Do it. Your body's trying to tell you that's what you need.
Don't go back to work.
Yeah.
Right away. Don't go back to
if you
work
can help
2 days
it.
Later. Yeah.
Right. Totally. Well,
I love
cool.
this. Yeah. Anything else you have? I love learning from you.
I think, I mean, I love how we, like I said, Venn diagram, circle. I think we touched on a ton of really good things. Hopefully, people can come away with really good ideas. So if I were to kind of summarize everything I went over as a chronic pain coach in terms of inflammation, is one, there's good inflammation. Inflammation actually is not a bad thing. Try to not, and I talk about this in like this, I talk about mind, your body, your mind, and your stories. A lot of people in their stories, it's like, oh, I'm inflamed, so everything's going to go downhill. Take that story, change that story a little bit, because inflammation is not your enemy. Don't use it as your enemy, because that will definitely cause more stress, and basically more stress ups your alarm system, which ups your pain cycle and just everything, right? So inflammation is good. Chronic inflammation is when you can do damage. But chronic inflammation is caused by so many different things. It's super individualized. So those of you looking for, you know, that perfect pill or that perfect diet or perfect exercise program, that is honestly going to be really hard for you to find. I'm not saying it's not out there for some people, but for most of us, it is a multi-dimensional thing. Kind of what we talked about. It's your lifestyle, it's your diet, it's your sleep, it's your stress management habits. It's all of the things. Yeah. And that's what I really coach about. And I know that's what you do too.
Everything is connected. I think that's the most important thing women need to understand, is it's not like I used to joke. So when I was little, I would not let my food touch on the plate, because I was like, my dad used to make fun of me. Does it have different apartments? Like, you eat the peas and you go into the pea apartment, and then, you know, and I couldn't let my food touch. But people think that's how our bodies work. Like, I have my hormones, I have, you know, my bones and my joints, I have my cardiovascular, like, yes, we have systems, but they all work together. And when we can think of it like that and recognize that, you know, if you're trying the basics, right, to get better, to heal maybe some acute pain that you have or inflammation, or to, you know, feel more energized, and they're not working and they're pretty like basics, then it's likely you're attacking the wrong problem. You're not looking at it through the right lens. We need to find a different system that maybe, you know, contribute to your. So that's what I'm excited to help women especially understand, is like, it looks like this problem, but it's actually disguised as this, you know. So
yeah, totally.
Yay.
So do you have any big things coming up for people interested in working with you?
Well, right now I have my cycle syncing guide, which is seriously, like, it's $35, and I put it at that price because I want it to be accessible to everyone. And it's not just for women who have fertility issues or women who have regular cycles. It's for anyone who has a cycle at some point in their life. So a lot of women there. Even women who have like PCOS, I walk you through like how to get more on track and to have more regular cycles, and to reduce the symptoms of that. But there's a guide, like if you're like me and you nerd out, you like research and you want to read it all. And then I have the quick like 3-minute overviews. I've got actual like a tool kit where you like, okay, I just want to implement this. How do I do it? So there's multifaceted. I was a teacher. I've got to like get all the different learning styles. I'm going to do an in-person workshop at the end of this month here in North Carolina. And I've already got the mind rolling on how to make that then a virtual event for women where it's not just an overview. I would never just do an overview of the guide. You're an adult, buy the guide, read it, awesome. We're going to go even deeper, looking more at root causes and more hormone imbalances and kind of some problem solving, troubleshooting ideas. So stay tuned because I'm really excited to get a date on the calendar for that.
Very awesome. And if you guys are listening to this on podcast, I'm going to have all of those links in all of that. So so if you're interested, definitely check out the description of podcast and the notes and everything. Very cool. Very cool.
Thanks for chatting with me. I love talking to you. We'll have to do this again.
Yes, exactly. And now that we know how to do it, or now that I know how to set it up, it'll be less like, what does this button do at the beginning?
I love it. I love it. It's real. It's real. Well, rest of your Sunday.
Yeah, you too. Have a good one.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.